Thank you for joining us on this Triumph Point of Sale training course brought to you by the team from CA Management. The aim of the session we're going to go through is just taking you through how to do all the different functions within Point of Sale. The good thing is you can either follow this video training all the way through step by step, or if you go to the contents and go from slide to slide, you can pick and choose the different components that you want to look at. And this means that if you want to go back to something later, you can go back and pick that slide and review it. Or if you've got different staff members or team members who need to learn particular things, they can just go to that particular section and just go through it. Good luck. Hopefully you enjoy it, and let's get started. The objective of this training course is to actually just take you through, give you some of the basic pointers of how to use a point of sale transaction, then go through some of the more sophisticated types of transactions, show you a few of the reports, help you set up some of the screens and maintenance, and if you're interested to go and have a look at some of the more detailed configuration and settings for later on. I'm not going to go through this point by point, but feel free to have a little bit of a read while you're looking at this slide. We're just covering some of the points that are in Triumph, just to give you an idea of what's available, what you can do. Some of the interesting ones is you can actually be running this on a touch screen or on an iPad quite happily. If we then just move on, and you'll see there's actually 2 pages of features, just giving you a bit of a feel for it. But as you're doing the training course, you will actually see most of these things being used in real life and practice. So if we're going into the point of sale, you need to just go to point of sale, transaction entry, sales, return entries, and that'll take you into the point of sale. Or you can actually go straight into the point of sale from the Triumph POS icon off the desktop. For today we'll just go straight in here, and this will pull up the point of sale. The point of sale gives you a very simple screen to work with. You'll see you've got items here that you can sell. It'll put up the top here the slip printer of what's being sold. And then you've got your touch screen here, so you can actually do different transactions. So easy way to make sales is you can just sell them off the dashboard, and you can actually drill in and look at different things and set up PLU buttons. You can come in and put in the product code itself and process the transaction that way. If you've got something with a barcode, you can scan the barcode and it'll actually automatically sell it. If you don't know the barcode or the stock code, you can look it up under the search, and it'll give you a list of the different products that are available for sale, and there's a few options of different ways of doing that. Just pick an item to sell. I can sell that item, finish that one off. Once I've finished it, I can pay for it by cash, EFTPOS, put it on account, pay for other cards, pay by cheque. I'm going to make this one just a cash sale and pay it off with $100, and just have a quick preview of the transaction. And there we are, getting the slip printer coming through, telling me the tax invoice and the details. As you can see there, it's giving me the change. It's a very easy way to actually make a point of sale, especially when you're using the touch screens and lots of the other features involved. So here's a list of all of the different types of transactions that you can actually do. You'll see we've done videos for each different one. When you're going through, by all means, I would suggest that you stop at the end of each video and actually go on to your Triumph Play system and try and do a few of the transactions yourself, because at the end of all of the videos we're going to give you some exercises to test you out. And what we've seen running it in practice is most people would have liked to have had a bit more time to play with it before they do their exercises. So the good thing is with this training video, you can just stop, go and have a play in the real system, come back to it, have another go from there. Hopefully you enjoy it. So just doing normal transactioning, and very easy to do that. As you've done that, the simple thing is to pay by cash. So if you are paying by cash, it pulls up, lets you actually type in the amount, or if you didn't want to type in the amount, you could say, well, let's make that a little bit larger first. I'll come back to my sales line and pick something that might bring the price up a little bit higher. That's better. And if I come back to cash, so instead of having to pay this time, I can say they've given me a $10 note and two 20s, and I've got it automatically to finish as soon as it gets the right money. It'll then print it out and do it, giving me the receipt and tracking it through. So the option there is, being a cash sale, I was able to either click on the exact notes, so I can track the notes that were given to me, or I could have just typed in the amount. If I have a look at a different type of sale, being an FPOS sale now, I can either click off the button, and this is all user definable, so I can click the different MasterCards or credit cards that we've got, or check and savings. I can choose the different cards. The setting up of the credit cards is something you can do so that they're either tying back as a direct bankable system, so it's going through FPOS, or you can have it so it's tying back into debtors. So something like American Express, it tends to tie into debtors because they're going to pay you the funds later. But you can search for those, pick up the one you want to pay, put it through. Option to have cash out, so if you want to be able to offer the facility to give someone cash out directly out of the till, you can do that. And depending on the type of transaction, you can record the card details, name and authorization. The normal process is you swipe the FPOS machine on the separate FPOS machine, get the records, and then record it back into here. So that way you know it's been done. If we have a look at other transactions, we can pay against the same sort of thing. So if I just void all, because I want to close that and now tell something else, and I want to now put that on account, I can click on the account and it'll actually give me the ability then to choose the customer. Same sort of situation, paging up and down or searching, I can do that. Pick the person, gives me any notes on them, and gives me their details so I can pay them. Something that does pop up if the person's got purchase order set up, so you have to have purchase orders, it'll fill that in for you. You have the ability as well, if it's a new debtor you want to set up, you can actually update or create a new debtor, or you can be changing details about their address and phone numbers and updating the standard Triumph system on the fly, all driven by security. If I process through there, how much do I want to charge onto the guy's account? So I can charge multiple transactions, so he could have paid some on account, some on cash. Something that's quite common to do with account customers is to have them set up so that they don't have the ability to put it on account, but means that you will sell against their account to get their details from statistics point of view. So if I process some, so they're exceeding their credit limit, yes, I can process that. Puts it through against their account like a normal invoice. And I'll look at just other cards for a moment. If I put something else through as a sale, I can have other cards. It could be PayPal, Secure Pay, pulled up, some other things. We've seen people doing rental agreements and rental payments so they can pay it against and pay off over a period of time, but lets you record that through. So it's a very simple thing to process those. We'll go and look at gift vouchers a little bit later because we need to sort of see both sides of those. It's doing this very simple point of sale transaction here. A couple of things you can normally do. You can either use the PLU button and just select an option, or where we've done multi-level PLUs, you can do that. You can type in the number, pick it up. In this case it's giving me some warnings. How many am I selling? You'll notice it's jumped over the description there and it's giving me certain fields that I can enter and some that are hidden away here. Just finish something and I'll go and show you how to look at that, but I can also look up my lookup here. When I do my lookup, I can use with the touch screen using these line up, page down type things to move up and down the pages, or I can do search functions to pick things, so I can pick an item off the menu, selling that. It's quite powerful just doing a normal sale, because as you do an item, it gives you items about what's that stock item. So I can look up that stock item, seeing details about it, its pictures, categories, groups, and doing a very detailed pricing if required, where I can buy it. This is all based on security. You can look up documents on a stock item, you look up notes, you can drill into the transactions, so I can look at the transactions that came on that stock item, or I can drill down into the general ledger journals that was created. So same sort of entries you see in the normal Triumph system, but really made into a touchscreen look. You've got the ability to look up the notes on all of these buttons are user defined, so you actually get to do them through the PLU area. So I can look up the notes on that thing, put a new note in, save a note, close there. I can look up via description, so I can search for something via part of its description and then find things from there. You can do some things that are just handy for when you're doing touchscreen. By clicking on this, it goes +1, -1, or you can click on it and it'll take you to the field, and you can edit by clicking on or typing in the number. If you go with the return quantity, it'll take it into a negative situation and let you actually then put something back as being damaged goods. So you can nominate whether it's been damaged, and if it's been damaged, we won't put it back into stock, just the same as you would see it in normal Triumph. So damage puts it in its own account, or if it's non-damaged, it'll put it back into stock for later usage. Buttons to allow us to adjust the price. Look up prices, so that same price button there is the same as clicking on the 3 dots. So the key to driving these and knowing what's open in that area is if I void all, because I don't want to save that transaction, and just minimize the point of sale for a moment and go into normal Triumph. If I was looking up under File Maintenance Security area and got my user and said I want to actually turn this on so it's enabled, displays enabled, and this is just setting up the different options that you can see. And then I can save that. Come out of there. If I pull my point of sale out, close out of there, and then go back into point of sale again. And we'll now see that I've actually been able to open up these extra fields so I can edit things manually. So that's really lets you drive and decide what information you want to have available. So if we're talking debtors in the system, most people can understand how you can have a debtor come in and they can then buy something. So literally come in, buy whatever they're buying and put it against their account, exceeding their credit limit, but quite happily then processing that. We're not going to pay it against that, we're going to pay it against my account, so I'm charging it onto my account, exceeds the credit limit. That's all very easy, so to process that through and produces your normal tax invoice that you would then be able to email out or set up in the debtors, and it goes all the way through. One of the other things that does happen with debtors is people come to the counter to pay their account. So if you have that situation, you can actually just click on a customer, choose the customer who's paying their account, and then once you've picked that customer, you can click on the account receipt button and it says how much money do you want to actually pay off. So if I pick a random number, I can process that through. So how do they pay for it? On their credit card, and that's actually processed through that. You'll see that their balance has changed, and if I then think, oh, I want to look at that customer and pull him up, I can now have a look at his account inquiry and see that his balance has changed, and if I look at his transactions, I can see that he's had details coming through against his account in the future. So there's the $4,800 which came from my POS. So it just lets you have that ability. It doesn't have to necessarily go through the back office. People can do it over the counter. For a lot of people, they do like to go through the back office, but options there if you want to do that. So while we are still talking debtors, and if I just avoid all and clean that, something that people can also do is you can have a new customer come in. So I can give them a new code called new customer, and based on my level of security I can put in his details, email information, phone, and then if I click on the update create, and tell him what he's buying and put it against his account, and process that. I didn't actually have that something set up quite right there, but that'll process through and should have given me new customer. So I need to have a look at what I didn't have quite set up, but he's processed that through, processed the transaction through happily. Yeah, so I haven't got it set up there, but that's basically letting you process it through and create the whole new account. Something a little bit different for us to look at. So on a normal POS screen, you have quite a deal of power to look things up if you've got the ability under just normal access. So if I looked up a stock item and picked that up, by all means when I'm looking up that I can search for things and see what's available and prices, only see things that are available, things that haven't got a barcode, so that makes it easy if you're doing non-scanning items. Right? You can search by different categories, different groups. You can search by descriptions of things. So I can just click on there and get part of a description or pad, and I'll just find anything that meets that criteria. So that's quite good. But if I'm looking at that stock item, I can do an inquiry and it will give me details about the customer background, what's available, where it is stored, what's reserved, if I've got the security access, where I can buy it from, what's the different prices, GPs. I can look up documents that relate to that item, so I could have a brochure or something on there to look up notes back on that item. I can look up the transactions behind it and see all the transactions that have been happening on that, and even if I pick a transaction I can then drill down and have a look at what the journal was and who actually did that transaction as well, depending on my level of security of course. So that's just on a product, but if I'm also then looking at it from a customer's point of view, I can pull up a customer, get the details of that customer, look up their account and go, oh, that's what he bought for the month, the year, last year, details of his last invoices, receipts, what does he owe us, what's his credit limits. We can look up documents that he had on his file if we had someone set up there, the contacts in his organisation, who they are, what's their phone numbers, notes that we've got on them, adding new notes if I wanted to. I can reprint a statement if I wanted to, or I can drill down and have a look at his transactions and then drill into that and reprint a form, so I can reprint invoices. I can look at the details that are on a particular invoice to see what was on that invoice, or I can do as I did with this stock item a moment ago, drill in and have a look at the journals. One of the other ones that's quite handy is this sales history. So a lot of the time people come in and go, can I have the same thing as I had last time? And you can then look up their details on when they bought things. Or that sales history can actually, the notes and sales history can be thrown straight to the front page if you want to, because of the user capability of this. One of the other ones that's handy is delivery details. If you've got multiple delivery addresses, you can have those come up, so you can put that on invoices. So it's quite impressive, the detail of information, just purely inquiry, and a lot of people are now taking that, just that ability, and by putting it on their iPad, or they can then drill in and get information on people and have it on hand all the time. food for thought there. So we've now got a situation that customer wants to come in and buy something, and we're buying something here quite happily. It's an item that we've got on stock, but we might find a situation that if I look up a stock item and I pick something here that I don't have enough in hand, the system will come up and tell me, do I want to purchase it or not purchase it? And I'm going to say yes, I'm going to want to purchase this in, so I don't actually have it here. To actually then record that for the customer, saying, well, yeah, we're going to get that in for you, we really need to save that order. So I go to save as, and I want to save as an order, system will automatically say, well, who are you going to save it for? So it needs to be, and I need to get all their details in, and a phone number to contact them, and how much are they paying for this, so I can actually then record that they're paying a deposit on it, or I can say, yep, it's full payment. If they had an order number, we can record it, when do they want the delivery, or I can in this case leave it so it's completely unpaid and just process that transaction through as a complete order. The order goes through. Then should the goods come in, I can then come in, pull up that order, and then process that order through. So what was their details? They paid their amount, and who picked it up, so I can get some details of Fred who picked it up, and they're paying it on their credit card. Oh. Yes, the reason it came up with that message, even though I did put it on back order, I haven't actually fully supplied it. So I should have actually then completed that off by opening it up again and changing that line over. So normally in that case I would have actually had the goods shipped in and told them. So if I now change it over, I can complete it, and it will then convert that order into a proper sale. Now I'm doing it through the whole situation, and you'll see it's put it through a tax invoice for that order number that I did. Nice and easy way that works there. There's another option that goes with ordering, and if I close out of here for a minute and just go into the setup on the system maintenance point of sale, you have an option to treat it like a back order, which is what we've done, or you can treat it more like a cafe restaurant scenario. So if I save that, so in a cafe restaurant type environment, it's more about saying that I'm saving something for a table. So we'll make a couple of sales, and now I want to save as an order, and it will ask me for a table number, so you're on table 15. That's it. I can then move on from there, commit that, and it'll produce a docket which can be then produced as a picking slip for someone to actually then make the coffee or whatever it is. It sits there, client can pull that up and open things up, add things to it, or when they come to the time that they want to pay, you can come in, pull that order up for table 15, see what they've had, and then pay out the balance of that and say how they're paying for it. Process it through, so I haven't got some general ledger posting set up there, and it'll process that through for me, and that actually does the whole transaction. So ordering has a bit of flexibility of how you can deal with things there. You can either have it so it's more of a back order situation, so you are bringing stock in for a customer, or you can treat it like you've got a table and they're adding to that table through the day. So one of the other things you can do in point of sale is you can actually save a quote from a customer. So customer wants a quote on something, I can just save whatever he wants and then just go save as. If I hit save as quote, first thing it always does is come up and say who is it that wants it, and you can fill in name and address and contact details. One of the temptations and errors that most people make here is you tend to hit the save button and that automatically thinks that you're going to save it as a sale. What you do need to do is actually finish off the details of the person's lines, and that I press the down arrow to do that, or I could have saved back as the save as. It then says how much do I want to quote. Little tick button here about template. You can actually set up standard quotes, so if you are giving a quote for something that's regular, you can pull it up and just reuse it over and over again. So I can send this quote out and hit the preview button, and you'll see the client's getting a quote. If I now want to convert that quote over, client comes in, I go open, I want to have a look at a quote, and there it is, it's Billy Bloggs' quote. There it is, yep. I want to process that. I can reprint, do things, and now I can save, commit, and I can then pay for it and say, look, I'm going to now pay that out as a payment. And I've converted that over immediately into a tax invoice and therefore gets rid of my quote. So nice and easy process of doing quotes. One of the other common things we see when you are doing sales is you have a situation you've partially got through a sale and then the client wanders off from the counter and someone else is waiting. So you have an ability to hit save as here and save as a park sale, and you can print up a docket to give someone, or you can just, in this case I'll just skip that and I can deal with another client, so I can go and pay this other client, process his transaction quite happily, give him his information. I won't print anything but basically give his thing, and then the other client can come back and go open, and I can open up that park sale that I've just put through, and I can then deal with that park sale just as I would in a normal situation. He's paying his money and I can process it. You can have an unlimited number of park sales that you want to have open, but it just lets you keep things open, keep processing without having the till held up. So it just makes it quite a simple process there. So we've got other types of transactions that people can do, not just doing day-to-day sales. So I avoid what I have there and so let's make a couple of sales. I have a few options of when I go to save as to how I want to save things. So first one we've got there is a lay-by. So let's have a look at doing a lay-by. So if I click on to say I'm going to save something as a lay-by, the system automatically expects me to put in a debtor code, or I have to put in details about the person so I know who they are, and give them a phone number. So we need some way that we can, oh, that was a suburb, I need to put the phone over here. Somehow I can contact these people, and given that it's a lay-by, are they giving me a deposit to pay on this lay-by? So yes, I'll take a $5 deposit, and that's really what's still outstanding on that lay-by. How are they going to pay their $5 deposit? $5 in cash, and then I can commit that lay-by. So the system then says this is what's sold. We've got the lay-by here. We've had a certain amount of cash. So normally at that stage you take the goods and put them in the lay-by area. Something to bear in mind with lay-bys and stock taking, normally lay-by items can either be chosen to be included in a stock take or not included, so something just to be considered later on. But person's now got his docket, off they go. They come in and then they come in to pay some more. So what you need to do then is open up that lay-by, and you'll see I've got a lay-by here. I can pull up that lay-by, see the details. Yes, that's the one I want to do. He's now paying another amount on the lay-by, and I can process that as a transaction. It says it's this deposit. If I open up the lay-by again, seeing the details of what's there, and you'll see as I open this up, we get an ongoing track record of what items he's bought, what he's been payment. Something to be aware of: if someone comes in and wants to change a lay-by, you actually have to void the transaction by reversing the whole transaction and start again. You can't actually change things on the go. But what's happening is we're now getting in the accounting system is getting a lay-by liability, and we're getting that money coming in as a lay-by deposit. Let's assume now the person's come in and paid out the rest of the lay-by, so they're paying out the $18.93 to finish it all off, and they've given us a $20 note. So we've got to give them their change. At that stage, when I save and commit that and get my report, you'll see it's come through and it's finished all that transaction off, and it's now made it into that final deposit, and then it gives me another report, which is the full-blown tax invoice for that lay-by. So now we know that that lay-by is fully complete. Makes it easy to track it through, and all of the accounting entries then take it out of the lay-by and then treat it as a complete sale. That's a quick summary of lay-bys. So we're now having a look at doing a gift voucher. First thing to understand with a gift voucher, it's just like selling a normal item. But if you click on the button to do a gift voucher, it says what is it. You normally then can record how much the gift voucher is. Let's go for $50. And for a lot of people, the gift vouchers are actually printed documents that are kept separate, and on that they will then record a serial number or something to recognise it. You can, though, if you want to print something out, I can then process that. It'll then ask me how am I going to pay for this gift voucher, so I can just pay cash for that gift voucher and then process it through, and it will then produce a report for me giving me that I've sold a gift voucher, how I received the payment. At that stage, it then puts into the general ledger a liability, because we now know that that gift voucher will come back at some time in the future and we'll have to redeem it. At the time they do redeem it, you normally get the situation someone comes in and they buy these things, so they've spent their money, so they've spent $50. They go, here's my gift voucher, and you can then look up the gift voucher and go, there it is, and process that transaction. The system is then waiting for the balance, and we then need to decide how we're going to pay for the balance. Something to be conscious of is the normal rule with gift vouchers: if once you use it, it uses up the whole lot in one go. If the gift voucher is not enough, the system will expect that you're going to give change to the person. So normally most people have the rule is they don't give change, but we can then track that through. So if I come through here and get the change that he's giving me, I can give him his proper change, process that transaction through, and you'll see here that it's given us that transaction, and he's made $60 worth of payments, $50 for voucher and the rest in cash, and that's going to feed through into my cash reconciliation report for the day. That's a fairly quick and easy summary of how gift vouchers work. One of the more common things we're now starting to see is people taking their POS system and actually making it into more of a mobile app. Because you can actually take your point of sale and with remote desktop put it onto your iPad, it's really easy with your iPad because it's touch to actually then start making those sales and things there and looking stuff up, processing transactions, and then you say, I want to now save this sale. So I have a couple of options. I can either save it as a sales order or I can save as a batch. So let's just do a sales order first. And first thing it asks me then is, let's have a look at a customer. So I can look at a customer, it brings all through the customer's details about what they are, and I can then process that through and commit that back onto that sales order. One of the tricks there, if you don't save and commit it as it treats as a sale, you really do need to go back to the sale as, or complete the line. What's the customer's order number? When do they want delivery? And it's been allocated to that number. And you can get your details of what that order is. So it's actually giving you a full-blown order. And I can produce a picking clip if I want that to be produced in the back office area. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just minimize my point of sale and then go into my normal accounting system. When I'm in my normal accounting system, I can pull that up now and see I should have a new order number 01104, which is the details of exactly what we just put through. So that gives me the ability to be out on the road processing things through, and it will then end up in the back office. And just as we hit that here, then it says, yep, I wanted to produce a picking clip. So I could have had my warehouse having that before it even got back into the warehouse. So in the same vein as that, if we go back in here and do another transaction, the save as batch invoice, picking the customer again and filling in all the details about the customer's record, it allocates it through into the system as a batch invoice. So if I go back into Triumph and go into debtors batch invoice entry, let's process that through as an invoice straight into my system, which I can then look at, review and update. So just giving people options of how they get things back into their back office accounting system without having to come out of their touchscreen operations. While you are in that touchscreen, you've also then, as a user, can look up customers. So if I looked up a customer on the road, I get the ability to see things about their accounts, etc. So there's another training session where we'll do customers completely and what you can look up. But it's worth knowing that you're going to be dealing customers, to have a look at that other video as well. One of the more interesting areas is when you're dealing in point of sale, is most people think point of sale is all about dealing with the shop where you sell things, etc. But we're starting to see more people use the point of sale for their storeroom, because lots of people, when they're doing job costings and productions and things, need to go to the store and they collect things from the store to be used on jobs. The system allows you to do is pick items to be used on a scenario and say, look, I'm using these on the job, and I hit save as, and it lets me go straight to job requisition. So I can nominate that this is going to go to my boat job and the cost center in my boat job, and I finish that off and hit a preview, it's done a stock requisition to that boat. So if I went and had a look at my accounting system under job costing and pull up my boat example, we should be able to now see some transactions that have been requisitioned through. So they've come through straight from my point of sale. For many people that seems a bit unusual, but when you actually stop and think about the practices, there's lots of people who are doing over-the-counter sales but also doing service jobs at the same time. So it means their service people can come and get the goods straight over the counter, can track it. We're also finding in practice that if you set up your store so it looks like a point of sale and has the scanning ability so people can scan their items out straight to a job, it actually seems to make the people understand they have to buy it. So it is essentially, you have the barcode scanner scanning the goods, bing bing bing, goes through, and it's a lot easier than people writing it down. So that's quite a neat feature to be able to do that and put things through to job requisitions. I just wanted to go in now and have a look at another transaction in point of sale. So we're pulling up a normal point of sale transaction. I can just put through some transactions here. The difference with this one is I actually want to record this as a quote. So if we just go to my save as, you'll see in here the system has two concepts of quotes. A quote for point of sale and a sales quote. Same thing with an order and a sales order. The difference being is the sales order and sales quotes are actually going to record into our debtors sales order entry and into this area of the business. So it's actually there's nothing in there for an order, and I expect there's nothing in there for a quote at the moment. So we should hopefully be able to create this, but this is allowing us then to create an order in there. Why would we do this? It's when we're actually running a client who is got a full-on account with us and they may be wanting to order something at the point of sale, or more commonly we're using our iPad and we're running our point of sale so we can use the touch screen on the road and take orders, and we want to give them a quote and pass it straight through to the system. So I put this in there as a quote. First thing I need to do is just tie it up to a customer. So I need to go and pick a customer, say, yep, it's for this customer. All his details coming through there. And now I can go save as a sales quote. I can preview that. And it's given the guy a quote, sent that out. I could have had this emailed out to the person. If I then come out of there again and now go off into my debtors, sales order entry, trying to pull this up. Oh, that's an order. Let's pull up a quote. And there it is, that quote to come all the way through. So just making it nice and easy. So what you actually find is this sales order area allows us to bring things in from our web store or in from our iPad so that we're all dealing with it in one place. Just trying to simplify the many places we can be selling nowadays. So the rest of the transaction on the point of sale is very easy. You can process it. The only thing is that when you actually put a sales quote through or a sales order, you need to finish it through your debtors order area, and you can't pull it up through the point of sale to finish it off. One of the more challenging things that people have when they're dealing with point of sale is, what do we do when we have a client who comes in and wants to order something that we don't have in stock? So if I just go into point of sale for the moment, and client comes in and says, oh, I want to buy a widget, and you go, oh, we don't normally sell widgets, so it isn't on our stock list, and it now goes, oh, this is too hard. Normally in this case, what can be set up in your inventory system, I'll minimize just looking at inventory, is in inventory we set up what we've called NS items, or they could be called miscellaneous items. The main concept of this is what they call non-stock statistics. So that lets us sell an item that we don't have in stock. So if I go back into my point of sale and put in that NS item, it can come up in here and I can say it's a widget. I have a choice then, depending on my settings, to either send it off a person. At the moment I'm just going to say I want to sell it. I can come through, and depending on my levels of security, I can change my price, I can enter my costs in, etc. And I can sell that out of the system. So let's put it in for a price, and the cost is whatever it is. So I'm able to record that as a non-stock item, putting that out. And how's the customer paying for it? Yes, he's paying for it with his card. Process that through, and it looks like a normal stock item, so he's bought an NS widget. So that was very simple. So most point of sale systems are really good at being able to sell things that you've got in stock, but they then struggle a little bit when you're trying to sell something you don't have in stock and you need to order it in because it's not in the system, it's not available to order, and the power's not there. That's something Triumph does excel in. So if we went in and had a look at point of sale transactions, pull up the transaction, and I want to sell some things. So I just pick something, and so that item there, normally I do have enough of them, but today I want to actually buy it in, so I'll say I'm going to purchase it in. I can buy in something else which is a non-stock item, so this could be my widget, and I'm going to purchase that in. It's worth $100, it's going to cost me $80, so I'm going to buy all that in. So most of the time when you've then got that transaction, you'd say, oh yeah, I want to pay for it by cash or whatever. Problem being, if I'm trying to pay for it by cash or pay for it by EFTPOS, and the people have ordered it, I'm going, hang on, I have a problem, because those things are actually, I don't know who it's for. If it's being ordered in, I need to get details of who I'm ordering it in for, etc. So first thing we always have to do is put in that we're buying this stuff in for Mr. Smith. What's their address? What's their phone number? Or their email address, so we can actually contact them. If they've given us a purchase order number, we can fill all that in. Once we put that in, we want to save that as an order. So I'm saving it as an order. Comes through as an order. Nice and easy. So save that as my order. All done, dusted. I can actually take the deposit off them if I wanted to. So in this case, let's take the deposit off them. And I'll take it as an EFTPOS card, so they're paying the whole lot. And then save and commit that. And what this will do is produce for me a docket for the customer, telling them what he's got on order, what's there, and he's paid his deposit. That's all well and good for making the sale at the counter. What actually happens if I come back out of here and go into my creditors? So if I'm the purchasing person in creditors purchase order in an area called purchase requisitions, I can look at my process requisition lines and just have a look at the detail. And you'll see here, this is actually pulling through the different that's the widget and the different item that I've been buying. When's it due? Who's it coming from? And I can now actually raise that and go, yes, I want to send that out to this person here. How much I'm going to pay for it. And that one there, I'll do the same thing. Get something different. I can then raise that as a purchase order. I won't print the order, I'll just process it. And come out of there. If I went then had a look at my purchase orders, all those items were on there, so you can see there's the widget that we ordered. Once I've ordered that, it'll actually come in and tell me as I'm receiving the goods. If I come back out of here and actually do a goods receipt of that purchase order, whatever the delivery number is, and yep, got all of those. Great, got all of them. As I receive it, it tells me it's for the point of sale, it's for Mrs. Smith. What's their phone number, and I can ring them up and get everything in. So you can see I've had a couple of goes with 2 different invoices, but that's actually getting all that stuff in, and they can now deal with it and come in, or we can deliver it straight out to them. So you can see that sort of wraps that whole cycle around quite easy and lets us bring in stuff that we don't normally have in stock for a client, keeping them all happy. So when you're looking at the point of sale, there's many different buttons and options that we can do here. So if we're looking at just till options, which is one of the ones that does many things once you've started doing things, we run through here. First one you can do is you can do a cash out. Normally a cash out means that I want to take money out of the till for, let's say, the milk, and it will ask me to code it to the general ledger account, so it will give me the full general ledger. It's integrated, so I can then go down here and office requisites, and is inclusive of GST, and will let me produce a journal, and this will then feed back into my till reconciliation report. So that's cash going out. You can also, under till options, have cash coming in. So cash can come in, same sort of thing as money's been given to you for some other reason. Normally very rarely used, but it's there if it wants to come in or out. Other options you've got is float in, so you're actually reducing the float in the till. So normally most floats sort of are a certain fixed amount and they stay there, so you only need to put the float in once. So I can put my float in and process that, and it will record that I've done a float, so it goes into my till reconciliation. I can take money out of the float if I wanted to. I can also do a cash rule off or an FPOS rule off. If you want more details on that, you just need to go to the end of period processing, but this is very simple. You click on it and it will actually then produce a report. So the cash has been ruled off for the day, or the FPOS has been ruled off. You've got the ability to automatically reprint the last receipt you did, or if you wanted to print a previous receipt, it'll pull up a list, and then you can use using either mouse or touch screen, you go line up, page down, and get to the right thing. So pick something and I can reprint that docket. If I need to reset my printers, because I've got default printers, I can reset the next printer or all printers. If I'm in the middle of a sale, let's just do a couple of lines of sale, and I can hit sales summary. It'll actually give me a summary of what that is rather than have the till reconciliation, or it can give me a subtotal on my receipt by hitting the subtotal line. Something that is handy is picking slips. Sometimes people have an operation where they might have a point of sale, but that point of sale then needs to be things need to be picked from an out the back operation or a separate warehouse, so you can actually print a picking slip to get someone to actually pick it and bring it to you, or give it to someone to collect on the way out. Opening the till, if you haven't done a cash transaction, you can have a button set up to open the till, and then you've got some other help information about. If you've been through the actual setting up of these buttons, all of this is user defined, but they're the sort of standard ones that you'll see in the system. So this area is for point of sale maintenance. You'll find that there's videos on each of these areas, and we've just tried to configure it so that if you are setting up the point of sale, you've got a good idea of how to go through each area. So go through each video, have a look, then go and have a play in your system, and we'll see where you get to from there. So when you're looking at the panels within Triumph, there are 3 or 4 main panels in the system. There's the main panel that holds all of the transaction information, the entry panel of where you're actually putting in the customer details, and the PLU button is all of the transactions or shortcut buttons. As you look at the individual video, you'll see this in a little bit more detail. So at this stage we need to start having a think about setting up some point of sale maintenance and doing some of the panels. So let's just, before we go in and understand how to do it under panel paint maintenance, we'll go in and have a look at a transaction and just talk about the different panels that are available. So as we load up our point of sale, we can see I've got this set up at the moment in a situation that I have my main panel up the top here. I have my transaction panel down the bottom, and my listings panel here, and my PLU panel there. If I come out of here, and we'll just have a look at the maintenance area for a minute. When we go into panel and button maintenance, you actually have a few different things that you can maintain here. The first one you can do is you do your main panel, and if we open this up, you'll see this is the part of the screen that's the main panel. We can have the entry panel, and I'll go and show you how this works in a minute, but literally if I come into a panel, I can see the different types of functions that I can do for different panels. We can then do the main PLU panel, which uses the lookups of things so I can sell items quickly. Main thing I wanted to have a look at here was this panel layout, because when you're doing panel layout, you can see there's 8 different ways you can move the 4 components around the screen to put them into different places. If I just change this one now to and save that, come out of there, and I'll go back into my point of sale again. And you'll see now what I've done is move my listings panel to here, my PLU to here, my main panel to here. I've then got my transactions. When I look at my transactions, you'll see that the little green panels can actually change there depending on the type of transactions I'm doing. So vouchers, there's nothing, go back to customers, getting it back. Just wanted to have a look at one of the other types of panel and button maintenance areas, which is the entry panel area. This one, most people don't tend to do a lot in there, but if we just look in here and have a look, because each one of these panels is actually related to a different type of transaction, and I scrolled through there fairly quickly, but if we just have a look at accounts receipt, it will pop up and give us our 9 different buttons that we're allowed to fill in. If we look at the different inquiries, most of them only have a few options. So being able to put a panel in and create a new button is exactly the same as in previous panels, but you'll see as we flow through and I pick off different types of transactions, the actual functions available to see on each different type of transactions vary. So for most people, they're quite comfortable just taking the options that are accepted. What is a little challenging sometimes is when you're doing something like a sales line, there's not necessarily enough space to fit all of the functions that you may or may not want. One of the ones that tends to slip through for a lot of people are things like this read scales. If you didn't know, Triumph can read scales, or it can import information into your point of sale from a file or from clipboard, which is handy when you're doing things on a iPad, etc., and you want to import files in or want to do a copy and paste of transaction into a file. So I'm not going to go through all of these transactions, but I would suggest in your own time is you actually have a look through at each of the different functions that come up, so you can just get an idea of what options are available for changing the screen around. So normally the first panel most people want to do is when they set up their point of sale is they come in, and we just go back into point of sale for a minute. Most people are fairly comfortable with accepting that the listings are their main panel and their transactions. They actually want to start working on this panel here, which is their PLU panel, because they're trying to increase their speed of operations. Normally this means when you're actually in here, you can set up your own screen. So I can actually have it so that I can have small buttons, I can have different size buttons and go into it, or I can go to previous. I can come into things and have panels within another panel coming into things, and you'll see I've got operations or movement buttons, which lets me take me back to the main panel, or if I come back to just one panel at a time. So people are looking to see how can they speed this up, because this means that they can then be using their touch screen to process things through, rather than having to use their barcode numbers or having to use their particular stock codes, put transactions through, or having to use search functions. You commonly see the high-speed transaction lines here, and you see items which are bulky that don't have barcodes, etc. Let's now just go off and look at how we can do this. To do this, you go into File and Maintenance Inquiry, Panel and Button Maintenance, and we want to go to number 3 here, which is the PLU panel. When I look at the PLU panel, I can have a look at the ones that are already set up. So I can see there's a main panel, different panels. If we just look at the these, you'll see each one of them has their own settings. You'll see when I'm looking at these settings, I can have up to 30 transactions on each one of them, and if we look at by doing a right mouse click, we can actually see that we can have double horizontal, double vertical, quad, or individuals. And if I click on one, once I click on one, I can delete it. I can select it to copy, swap it, or I can nudge it around. So if I nudge this down, it'll move it down one, or if I click on that and nudge it back up, I can move it back up into a spot. So giving you flexibility to move things around and actually make the screen look like it is. The key thing to know with all of these panels, they're all separately independent panels, and you do need to actually link them up. So when I actually go in here, we'll go and create a new panel. To create a new panel, come down to the, oh, let's clear out this one first, and we'll put it in and say number 10 will be new panel. And when I set up the new panel, I have a few little functions. I can set up its colors, its borders, I can give it a different background or a different imagery. At this stage, I'm just going to go with a standard one and save that. Once I set up that new panel, it now gives me my 30 characters or buttons that I can set up. If I just do the first one, and I want to do this, so I can actually make it into either text or image. If I just go with the image to start with, don't need to put anything in text. I want to go and make it a PLU or a stock code. So all I need to do is find the actual stock item, and I can either do that by typing the code in or doing the normal search functions. I can then inherit the stock image, so if there is a picture already set up on the item, and I hit F2, you'll see that image now comes through onto there quite happily. I can then move that around and make it bigger, smaller. I don't want to do that at the moment. I'm just going to go and put in a new one. This one I don't necessarily want to put it in as being an item. I want to put in its own description, so I can pick the next stock item, and this, you'll see it actually automatically brings through the text. So I can save that as it is. Or a third method of doing this is if I put it to an image, put in a different stock item. But this time, instead of actually going to a pre-inherited one, I can go and pick a different image, save that record, and you'll see I'm now getting different types of images coming through. So just to reiterate that one, the first one is where I was using the inherit stock image. The second one, I used the text icon and I put in my own text description. And the third one, I used the image, but I used the ability to select our own image and bring that in, place it in the system. Other functions we can do while we are in here, we can start to put in shortcut keys. So if you wanted quick shortcut keys, you can set that up on each function as well. You can make it different colors. You can start to create different fonts and color text for different items on the actual grid. And you'll see there's another one here which is called panel. This is fairly crucial to the whole scheme of how panels work. If I go back down to number 5, 6, I need to have this panel so it links up with something. And I want to go back to the main panel. So I set that up and I pull down the function. When I pull down the function, it only gives me a couple of little things here. One is to put in a stock item or a PLU, or I can load a previous panel or load the main panel. So I want, in this case, load the main panel, and let's go save with that. And I'll come into the number, this one. Oh, not an image, I want a text. And I want to go previous. So load the previous panel. When I do that, I do need to actually tell it what was the previous panel, because the system doesn't remember it, so I need to actually say, go back to what it was, and it'll now know what to do with it. I can pick on that and give them a different color. I can make that a different colour. Make that one different colour, so therefore I can see what I'm doing. I've created that panel, but that panel's not related to anything, so I'm still going to need to go in and link that up to one of the other panels. So if I now go to something like special offers, where I have a panel, and put one in here and say I now want to link this to new panel, give it a name, and I want to load a particular panel. When we created that panel, there was a number up here, which I know was number 10, so I need to link that panel with number 10. And so I know that's now going to go to my new panel. If I escape out of there now, and come back into my point of sale, we go to our advertise specials. You'll see now there's a new one here called new panel. I could have had icons and things on there. I go into there, I'll see my 3 items I created. I can go back to my previous panel, and it lets me jump around looking at things, etc. So quite easy to actually allow me to do transactions, jumping around things, doing other sales, carrying it all the way through. Hopefully that gives you an idea of how to start setting these up. The challenge for most people is when they start setting these up is how many panels, what do you want to put there. I tend to always err on the side of doing minimalistic to begin with, and then once you've got the hang of it, then you can start growing and putting extra panels and offers, etc. Just wanted to have a look at one of the other types of panel and button maintenance areas, which is the entry panel area. This one, most people don't tend to do a lot in there, but if we just look in here and have a look, because each one of these panels is actually related to a different type of transaction, and I scrolled through there fairly quickly, but if we just have a look at accounts receipt, it will pop up and give us our 9 different buttons that we're allowed to fill in. If we look at the different inquiries, most of them only have a few options. So being able to put a panel in and create a new button is exactly the same as in previous panels, but you'll see as we flow through and I pick off different types of transactions, the actual functions available to see on each different type of transactions vary. So for most people, they're quite comfortable just taking the options that are accepted. What is a little challenging sometimes is when you're doing something like a sales line, there's not necessarily enough space to fit all of the functions that you may or may not want. One of the ones that tends to slip through for a lot of people are things like just read scales. If you didn't know, Triumph can read scales, or it can import information into your point of sale from a file or from clipboard, which is handy when you're doing things on a iPad, etc., and you want to import files in or want to do a copy and paste of transactions into a file. So I'm not going to go through all of these transactions, but I would suggest in your own time is you actually have a look through at each of the different functions that come up, so you can just get an idea of what options are available for changing the screen around. Continuing to have a look at point of sale, if we go into file maintenance, most people have already learnt how to do panel and button maintenance. We have a look at some of the other functions that are in here. The first one I was just going to have a look at is credit and debit card maintenance. This is very simple to set up for people. It actually lets you set up your different types of credit cards, etc. You'll see things like PayPal come in here. It's actually treated as a credit card from the system point of view. It's just a payment method. Something to do, you do need to bear in mind when you are setting up credit and debit cards. There are 2 types of credit and debit cards. You have your MasterCard, and normally your MasterCards and Visa cards go straight into the banking system. And you can actually then define whether you want to allow a cash out from the till. Is it set up as an EFTPOS card so it can go through the EFTPOS machine? If you want to charge fees on things, you can actually start setting up some fees on on receipts and payments as well. If you're having a look at something like an Amex card, it's normally treated a little bit differently. It might be an EFTPOS card, but it actually goes into the debtors system because Amex are going to pay you a certain amount of money less their fees at a later date. So it actually goes into your debtors system and gets treated as a debtor. Just to make that sort of simple, and you'll see coming through. One thing that can be turned off, you can actually have a credit card coming through that isn't an EFTPOS card, so then it's not an EFTPOS transaction, it's just a pure credit card from manual process. Not used that often in that today's scenarios, but something just to be conscious of should you want to do it. Just looking now at some of the other options for security. If you're going to file maintenance, security maintenance, you can come in here, and what you can actually see is that the security of the point of sale is actually driven by the different user groups that an employee is put into. So we'll see here that there's different user groups, and if I just minimize out of there for a minute and have a look at an employee, you'll see each different employee is set as being belonging to a group. So in this case, I'll just put in a test user, and we'll put the user to demo group. So now I've put that person into the demo group. If we save that, and I come out of here and go back into where we're looking at security maintenance, that user could actually then, or would automatically get given the same security as this demo group here. So when we have a look at that, what this actually is saying, that each different group of people, we can set it up and have different types of tax calculation. We can have maximum discounts set up that these groups can give away. They can allow returns of items. They can be allowed to exceed credit. We can also have a situation that we can automatically create debtors on the fly. When we do create debtors on the fly, they can either be set up with an account or without an account. Quite commonly, most people set them up as a COD debtor. So this means that as they're actually doing a transaction, they'll get a history of what people have bought and when they bought it, and they can then use that for later marketing purposes. And we can put in whether we want to hide costs, so people can't see costs on the transaction. If we have a look through here, we can see a user can display only transactions. If we look at that, they can be enabled to edit transactions, step over transactions, display only, have it disabled so you can't see it at all. So each different menu option, so you've got quantities, return type, all of these functions can be done. I'm set in as assistant administrator person, so I'm just going to go and change a few of these things so that we can look at them. And I'll make one of these. Yep. I'll enable that one. So that'll actually bring up my discount amount. If I save that, one of the other things we can also do is then come into different panels and have it so that this group can have certain panels turned off. So I can come in here and say, look, I don't want them to have float, any information on float, so that now will turn that off on the screen for them. And we can do the same for their entry panels or for their PLU panels, so that we can go, we don't want these people to be having, or not that one, I want the specials. I don't want to see the new panel, so I can turn that off for these people who are in this group. So now I've done that, I come out of here and log back into point of sale again. The first thing we can do is we go into special pro. You'll see that that panel turned off there. If I go into my till options, the float's turned off. If I come back to my normal transactions on the screen and put in a sale, or put in one at the moment, we're in 0692, you'll see what happens there. It immediately jumps over these quantities, got step over on them. If I actually go backwards with a step over, I can come back and manage and edit these themselves, and I've got discount turned on, so I can come in and put in a discount there.
Something that is handy for descriptions, if I go to description, I can actually type in extra stuff for the invoice. So I can put my own description lines on an invoice as well, and you can set up your security. Good thing with a step over, you tend to do a lot of that when you're doing barcode scanning. If you are scanning something, you want to have it so it scans that and automatically goes through to the point in the transaction that you want to make a change, or you want it to carry on to the next one. So I can down arrow, pay for that with cash using my $50 note, and preview my receipt. They're just doing a normal point of sale, but literally means that you're able to now start setting up the flows and the things that people can actually do. And you can set it up so only certain people can see it. So you're wanting to actually change your point of sale and adjust some of your settings and configurations. So to do this, we need to go to System Maintenance, System Setup, and there's a point of sale control maintenance. We just come in here and have a look at a few of the things that come through. First one is we've got PLU items. That's turned on at the moment. If I minimize there and go into point of sale, what you'll actually see is PLU items is this whole section down the bottom here. I'll close out of there, turn that off. And we go back into point of sale again. I can turn that whole section off so you don't actually have the touch screen type stuff there. Just handy for some people who don't have a lot of that type of environment. We'll come back out of the point of sale, go back into the system maintenance. We'll just talk through some of these other options, turning that back on. So do we want to be able to enter non-stock costs into a transaction? So as you're doing a sale, and if you're putting in a non-stock item that you're selling, a non-stock item is something you don't normally carry in stock. Do you want your staff to be able to cost it? Most people do. Do you share EFTPOS readers? Triumph has a couple of options with this. First one is you can have an integrated EFTPOS, and in that case an EFTPOS machine has to be linked up individually to each different workstation. In a lot of environments, people will actually have the one EFTPOS machine shared amongst 3 or 4 tills, and in that case you then flag it as being linked up, and this means that when you do your cash reconciliation reports for each different till, they'll then combine into one grand total to make reconciling back to your bank's statement a lot far easier. We have an option here to print accounts out to docket printers. So when we're actually printing out account sales, we have an option to say, do we want it to print as a slip printer, or do we want a full size A4 slip or A size 4 invoice? You can do it in here, or you have got an option under Systems, Forms, Setup. We come into Point of Sale Setup in here. You'll see all the different types of transactions coming through. And if we're doing these type of transactions, I can come in here and say, I want it in a docket format, or I want it in an A4 format. So up at the top here, if you look at this, that's the normal thing. If I change that, it'll now change to being the A4 format. Same situation in all of my transactions. So you can choose the different types of transactions and how you want to print them. While we are in here, you also have an ability to set all the forms up to be either going out straight to printer, straight to email, or you can have them going to multiple places if that suited you. So back into point of sale maintenance. When we're doing a transaction, do we want to default the cash amount? If you've got for a lot of people who have cash amounts, that means they're taking cash all the time as their preferred option, so we turn that on as the preferred option. A lot of people nowadays take their money via EFTPOS, so they turn it off. Do we require a password? This actually tends to tie in with this forcing an operator. So if you want to actually do a transaction and always force the operator to log in to say who their ID is, we can have it so that it logs on the first time of the day or every sale. They have to log in with their code. And an extra level of security, we could require them to put their password in each time. For a lot of people, they tend to actually be happy enough putting the ID in but not having the password. Confirm clear is there is a clear button on the transaction. Do you want people to actually have to confirm they've done that so that they can't just hit it by accident? Automatic commit is on getting full payment of the transaction. Do you want it to actually assume the transaction is going to complete? So just taking away an extra keystroke. We can lock down the grid, and the grid is just preventing changes of people changing the look and feel of some of the search screens. When we're actually coming through, there are some profile information that pops up at the end of a sale. So you may want to know someone's postcode, email, you may want to know their male, female. This is all for marketing information. Do you want to warn if you've got negative stock? A lot of situations is point of sales, if the person's got it in their hand, you just want to sell it. You don't want to be warned that it's gone negative because it means your system is wrong, but sometimes it's useful. Do you recalculate a sale on putting in a debtors code? If you are running debtors, a lot of people will have special prices arranged for their debtors, and they do want to therefore have it so that as soon as they put their debtors code in, the whole system will recalculate. And this then goes back through and checks that there's any special prices that are available for that person and gives them those prices. Rounding to the nearest 5 cents up or down, so just for cash purposes. How do you actually break down in your time? So we saw in one of the early reports we can break down and know what times things are being sold. Do you want it every 15 minutes, every half hour, every hour? What's the normal cash sale price that people will be paying? So as they're coming through, they're a cash sale person, what's their normal price? If they're a debtor, it would go to whatever set up on the debtor's account. Part of the tax laws, you are required to capture people's name and address if it's over $1,000. For some people, they actually want to force their staff to capture that information for people that are lower than that. So it's just a useful feature for getting information on clients. The security issue about Tilrex, do we want to let people have a look at things for the one day? They're not allowed to look back at all. When you're actually looking at transactions, and if I just go back into point of sale again, so I just pick a transaction, put it through. You'll see over here it has the Endeavour to rule pad. What this is asking is, do we want to have the name of the product there, the alternate code, or the product code? Talked about the ID. When we're actually going to a blank transaction, so if I just come back to the point of sale again, if I have the situation that I leave this blank, I can have it so it automatically goes to, lets me put in the code, or it can automatically go to this search screen to help me find things. Or if I leave it blank, I can then come down onto a description code and put in my own description or whatever I want to put. So it just gives me a few options on how to process things. At the end of a sale, what do we want to see? Do we want to actually see the summary of the transaction? So if I just finish that transaction, do I want to see this summary information here pop up on the page, just so I can see what's balance owing? How long do I keep transactions for? So most people, we tend to keep them for something like 36 months, but everyone can choose, and that means when it's deleting, it'll actually delete any history from that point. We have a couple of types of ordering. We have a cafe restaurant type ordering or a stock back order. We begin with the first one being the cafe restaurant. Fairly simple situation that someone comes into your cafe and you want them to be able to sit at their table, and you know that table 13's ordered a certain amount of things, and you can then process that through and edit and take a deposit if necessary, or just process different orders so that then when they come up they can pay it. Or for other people, they want to deal with stock back orders, so the client could come in and give them an order for stock, and we require the customer to give us at their order number. What do we want to come up for the date? Do we want to have the delivery date of when goods are going to go out, and if so, what's the default time? Or we can have an expiry date for when this back order is going to expire. A couple of different options there. If we go into the defaults, this is just trying to speed up the processing. What is this type of transaction or default payment method? Normally nowadays it's EFTPOS. And what is the default EFTPOS card that you would use if you were going to pull up and use an EFTPOS card? When you come in, where do you always want to go as you exit a PLU, to a new line or stay on the same one? So if I just look in here, so what that means is if I go to my sales line, as I do a transaction, did I want it to go back to a blank one, or did I want it to actually come back to where I was? Most people want to go to a new next one because it's on to the next transaction. Coming in with a customer, do I start on their code or name? Same thing here. If I'm putting it to a customer, do I want to start on their debtor code or go straight to the name? I can search from either one and it will give me the same searches, but it just takes me to a quicker place to search or start from. What's the panel I want to start on? So we've talked about having multiple panels, so you can actually choose the panel that brings up onto screen. Most people have one panel, but we do find that in some business units they'll have different places and different states wanting to have different panels. What's the PLU buttons that you want to have popping up? So you may be in the butchers, so you want to get the butcher panel up to start with. Starting in which panel again, which sales line I want to be on a sales line to start with. I can have different colors, default salespeople, default operators. And I also have an ability to have what we call an embedded barcode. What this is actually about is, for many grocers or type places, the butcher will actually have their own weighing scales machine. When they do that, they will actually put on the PLU item and the price all into a barcode. So you can actually set it up so that when you're scanning that barcode at the front counter, it will automatically recognize that it is that type of barcode, and this is where it's going to find the stock code, and this is where it's going to find the price to process it through. All right, that gives us the setup. One thing else we should be looking at when we are talking setups is under system maintenance, under utilities, under the workstation maintenance. There's also an area in here for every PC where we flag point of sale information, where we want to actually say, is this a point of sale machine? If we're sharing an EFTPOS machine, what EFTPOS machine are we sharing with, so that they know how to link them? Or if we're integrating with EFTPOS, it'll actually come in and fill in that information. If I'm using a POL display, linking it up with OPOS, what's the name of it? Same for linking up with a cash drawer. And do I want to pop things for checks, vouchers, EFTPOS, credit cards? For this actual PC, what's the main panel I want to do? What's the starting panel? What's the PLU I want? Do I want my on-screen keyboard to kick up? And if so, for what type of entries? You tend to have this more when you're running an iPad. If we're then coming in further, we can actually then have the user that comes up that is the valid user every time I log on to this machine. And if I'm linking to a scales, what is that scales? And when I'm doing remote terminals, it just, is it a remote device being a tablet, just limits some of the transactional information going for up and for down the line. So one other thing to just conscious in there is when you are setting up this, there is actually a document that's available on the Triumph website about setting up printers and how to set up OPOS devices. That would be a useful document to have as a supervisor to know how to set up and link those things together. I think that gives us enough of the setup. So just for the setup of the point of sale and linking it up to the general ledger, there's a lot of extra accounts that you do need to just consider. So if I just go into system maintenance, system setup, general ledger control maintenance and general. So in here we have our normal control accounts. So accounts that are important for point of sale, and just make sure you've got your bank account and your default receiving account. If we then come through, and you'll see there's this particular tab here for point of sale. So point of sale, we need to make sure we have our POS cash account. So the POS cash account is designed so that as we're doing a transaction, it will record all of the money taken over the till that's gone in temporarily into the till. So at any point in time, you can look up that account and know how much money should be in all the tills across all of the stores. Same thing with the POS FPOS. It will keep tabs of how much FPOS you've taken for the day. Then when you're doing your end of day processing, it will actually take this money out of the POS cash account and move it up to the default receiving account, or the POS FPOS, it will take that out of the till and put it straight into the bank, because you actually get the settlement of your POS machine every night. Some of the other accounts coming through is the POS unders and overs. So as you're counting your cash, if your cash doesn't balance up to what you put through the till, you can actually record your unders and overs, and it'll actually give you a total of that. No charge is dealing with situations where you're actually giving away goods for nothing and you want to be able to charge it and you know how much you've given away. Gift vouchers issued is if you issue a gift voucher, there is a liability for that gift voucher because someone's going to come and use it, so it will record the total of that for you, and that'll then tie up to what's in your held report. Order deposits and lay-by deposits, similar accounts in the fact that if you raise an order and someone gives you a deposit, you've got to record what you've received from them. Same thing with a lay-by, if someone's giving you money against a lay-by. And then you've got other income, and the other income is designed for where you've received things, or if someone hasn't come and collected their lay-by or their order after the nominated time, you can then write off those deposits back into other income. So hopefully that gives you an idea of the key accounts for point of sale. You still need to make sure you then have set up all your inventory accounts so that you know where your inventory is going and it's all coming through the correct areas and all your purchasing for your other modules. But I'm not going to cover the rest of that in detail. I'll just leave you to deal with that in an individual area. So when you're having a look at the point of sale reporting, Triumph's got fairly simple point of sale reporting, but it's consistent with all of their other modules that you have two areas, one for your listings, which gives you any static information, and then you've got the reports, which is any dynamic information that's been calculated or taken over from reports. You'll see there that a note that lots of people tend to come in and look at reports in any of the modules and always just hit the preview button and don't really actually look at some of the options and features. So if you have a look in there, you'll see that there's many options and features in all of the reporting that just gives you different ways to look at the same information. So have a go at trying some of those options. It doesn't do any harm. It's only a report. It's never going to destroy anything. And it will be surprising how much information you can get out of the system. One of the things that lots of people want to do is once they are starting to do things in their point of sale, they want to then start having a look at the reports and listings. If we just have a run through each of those, starting with listings. So listings is very simple. It really just gives us a list of the credit cards. So there's just giving us a list of the credit cards that we've got in the system and our floor limits and debits and credit, not debits, credit, whether they're linked to the debtor or linked to bank accounts. Nice and easy because there's not much in there. Reports is where the power starts to kick in. So there's a series of reports here. One of the main reports people use a lot is the till reconciliation report. Used more in the end of day process, but if we come in and have a look at this, from a majority of people, they will turn the audit trail on, and it gives you the ability here to do a selection of dates, times, workstation. If you're running multi-location, multi-division, it will also give you the ability to have a look at each location. Subject to security, you're only allowed to go back and look at a certain amount of time for your location, but as an administrator, administrators can see more. I'm just going to take this so I get everything at the moment, and this will then give me my tilt and show me every transaction that's come through. If we're looking at this, it's quite powerful. It's giving me the date, the time the transactions were done, how I paid for it by EFTPOS, by credit card, etc. And gives me cross-reference information to when it was actually banked for in a MAPOS account. If I double click on one of these transactions, it will actually go in and give me the actual line-by-line detail of every invoice as well. The key to this isn't so much always the detail, but what you actually get here is, let's scroll up a bit, for each different point of sale machine, it gives you a breakdown of your sales for the day and what was number of sales made and the dollars made in each area, and how much was taken cash EFTPOS. So giving you the ability to do your end of day counting of how much money was coming in, coming through new lay-bys, etc. And if we page down to the end, it will actually consolidate all of my tills together to give me a grand total of what's happened for the system. Coming from there, next one it actually gives me is my held transactions. So when I look at my held transactions, I can actually look at all my gift vouchers, lay-bys, orders, quotes, and whether they're open, closed, or all. If I just go with open, it will give me a list of all of, in this case, my lay-bys, and if I drill in on a lay-by, it will give me the detail of what was on each different transaction, so I can see what was happening. Normal reports there with all of the ability to print them out to Excel or to PDFs. One of the ones that is used quite commonly is the sales breakdown report. So when we get to this, you can start to look at this and say, I want to look at the things for today, the week, the month, calendar year, financial year, or a date range, or all. I'll go with all for ease of purposes. I can print it with or without graphs. One thing that allows most reporting in Triumph is really around exclusive of GST, but in a point of sale world, most people track it actually inclusive because that's the amount of money they've taken. So you can choose the different ways you want to report your sales figure, X or Inc. You can get your top 10 or top 20 items sold. You can include orders and lay-bys. So depending on how people talk about an order or a lay-by, as whether they want to record it as a sale, yes, it can go in or not. Hold dollars and see things highlighting below certain GPs. I can group it by a whole range of things, by debtor group, stock group, category, manufacturers, by the supplier, by the different salesperson or area, who was the operator, what workstation did at what time. So if I just do one by stock group, by none, and I can see here I've got all of those variables as well in my selections. So this gives me quite a good report by stock group. What have I sold? How much Inc tax? How much X tax? What's the cost? What's the GP? And if I scroll down a little bit, it will give you margins for each different, or nice little graph of each different group. If I rerun that same report just in a different way by using time this we now get a different report saying what time were different things selling. So you can actually quickly get an idea of what was selling at what time. Moving down to the next page, you can then get an idea of what is the busiest time of the day and how much is being sold. So you can actually start looking at managing staff. So there's quite a deal of power in there to change things around. Next one down, sales summary report. Very similar selection criteria, very similar options there. If we then have a look at this, in this case by operator, Oh, good, there's only one operator, so that's not very easy to see, but I will cancel that one and run it for all, so we get a bit more variety. Oh, there we go, list 2 operators, but now we can see that each operator, what was their average sales unit, the dollar values, Inc tax, X tax, GPs. Let's run it by debtor code, that will give us a bit more variety. So now we're seeing, well, which debtors came in, what was their average items per sale, what was their average sales value, Inc tax, X tax and GPs, and then you can get a breakdown of the variety of clients. So cash sales is obviously the biggest client in that area. Moving on to the next report being sales matrix, similar sort of selection criteria that we've got coming through here. What this report gives us is, I'll do it by all again, is the sort of cross tab report where we can see that here are the customers and they've been buying in these groups. So just giving you another way of looking at a similar sort of data, so you can start to do cross tab reporting and to see the margins and things for groups or stock items, etc. And that's really driven by you choosing the different types of things that you want to do a cross tab on. Last report is the POS banking reconciliation. This gives us an ability to compare our cash POS, FPOS, and compare to see whether it's actually linking up to the general. Obviously in my play company it's not doing well, but the aim should be that these should always tie up. And it's handy if you are having any issues with your POS reconciliations, just to be able to get a quick summary. I think that covers all of our reports. The only thing that tends to come into this at times is some clients get confused when they're looking at their sales and they're going, hang on, I've sold more than that's coming up on my sales breakdown report. Something that everyone needs to be just conscious of is this reporting in this is only the point of sale. If I want to have a look at my inventory sales or my overall sales for the whole organisation, because I may be selling things through debtors as well, in that case you would be better off to use inventory reports, daily sales reports, and gives you sort of similar sort of options. I just go stock group by none. This gives me all of the items sold in this date range that I've had, with the same sort of margin, not just through the point of sale, but through my sales order entry, through my web shop, through all my different varieties of systems that have been going in the business.
So there isn't actually a need to do a formal end of day to do postings to the general ledgers, but most people will do an end of day style to count their cash, make sure everything ties up. So if we just look at what normally happens here, most people will tend to go and run, first report they'd run is a till reconciliation report, either running this with your audit trail, we run it there, and then choosing to run it for a certain day, and normally because you're running your cash cashing up from a time to a time, you can actually then say I'm doing it from 9 AM to 9 AM each day. I'll just run a report here. I haven't got all that data, but it will then come up and give me my till rec for each till, and then you can get the count figures coming through for each day. So the key thing here is when you're looking at this is you're then saying how much cash should I get, how much FPOS, adding all that up, making sure it's correct, and that'll tie up with your reports. So to actually get your cash and make sure that agrees, there's normally two ways of doing your rule off per se to check your cash. First way is to do it through the point of sale itself, and then there is a consolidated one. We just have a look at the point of sale one. You go into the till options and do FPOS rule off, and it'll run up a report for you, which is a simple report. I won't print it, and then you can do the same with the cash rule off. Key thing with when you're doing these rule offs, this doesn't have to be at the end of the day, it's really like an end of shift. So this will come up and say how much cash you've had, and behind the scenes it actually does a general ledger journal. It moves the cash rule off, takes it out of the cash POS cash account and puts it into the cash waiting to be deposited. The FPOS rule off puts it out of the POS FPOS account and puts it into the bank. So it is actually closing off. So if you were running a situation where a till was being closed off once or twice a day, you can actually do a rule off, count your money there, check it all off, make sure it ties up. So that sort of then lets you tie up through your till reconciliation report, matching everything up and letting the next person take over. For a lot of organisations this can be a bit tiresome if you've got 3 or 4 tills or different branches, and head office wants, or the accounts department want to do it all in one go. So if you want to do it all in one go, you can go to the special processing POS banking area, and this will then let you actually go through and do the process. So you'll see here it asks me to do cash or FPOS. I can do them separately if I like. I'll do both at this stage. When I'm doing this, it comes through and says cash banking. Because I've already done my rule off, I haven't got any more rule offs to run through. If I was doing a consolidated one, it will actually ask me to do my rule off. So let me just finish this off first, and then we'll come back and have a look at doing a consolidated rule off. Any unders and overs in my counting I could record, and any unders and overs for my FPOS I can record. I can then process that through, and it'll then bring it back into my banking. When I get to my banking here, this actually lets you then get a consolidated banking situation, and will bring in all of your receipts from debtors and other parts of the business and print out your bank deposit slips. If I just abandon that for the moment, we'll go back into point of sale and we'll just do a couple of transactions so we can do a rule off in a consolidated manner. And we'll make a couple more sales. Sell it with my FPOS. Instead of doing my rule off this time through this two's rule offs here, I'm going to do a consolidated rule off. So if I close out of there and go back to my normal accounting system, I can now do special processing POS banking, and we'll see the difference that happens here. As I do this, it will then come off and ask me to do a cash rule off. So where previously I had done it individually, this will then bring it through and say this is what it is for the all the tills. If I had multiple tills, it would list them out for me. I can do cash, I can do EFTPOS. I can then process that through. If there's any banking to come through, it would put through, and I can process that through. So let me just, better do my rule off first. So I need to click on those before I go ahead, because once I click on those, then it will actually take it through, produce the rule off reports, EFTPOS rule off report, brings it through, and then I can do my banking. And it will actually then process everything through for me. So once you've actually done that and you've actually got your processings happening, the system can actually run through and make it all work. The good thing with that is if you're doing it, you've got the option to either do it individually with individual tills, or when you do the consolidated one, it all flows through. There is a written set of procedures which are notes in the procedures which we've actually put on the video, so you can actually print those out and work your way through them. So I'm just trying to give you a bit of an idea of the sort of end of day procedure here. Is what happens in a process is you put through your different sales, you need to do your rule off to nominate that cash or checks or EFTPOS has been completed. You then do your banking for the day and produce your bank deposit slip. So if we looked at it in real life scenario, the money comes into the till as a normal sale. It's not taken out of the till until we do the rule off. Then when we do the POS banking, it's when we take the money to out the back to get ready for banking. May not have it gone to the bank, or if it's an EFTPOS transaction, it does actually take it to the bank because it's doing your EFTPOS machine clear off. And then the banking deposit is actually when we take the money to the bank. For a lot of people, this may only be once a week, so it can accumulate and then all go in the one deposit slip. Just giving you some useful documents that you might want to go and have a look at. On the CA Management website, under our FAQ area, we have a whole series of different notes on different functions within Triumph, but some of the ones that are worth having a look at are the end of day procedures and the POS training notes. Triumph also have another document which is setting up POS and OPOS setup, which is handy for anyone trying to link up their cash registers, scales, or their printers. Just goes through all the necessary setup functions. Or if all else fails, by all means, give us a ring at support@caman.com.au, and whoever's on help desk will give you a hand to go through it all. Hopefully at this stage you're sick of listening to my voice, which is good, but you've also learnt some of these skills along the way. And this is the last slide, so well done, congratulations, you've now completed the course.